what you guys are doing, having already rendered service, whether as an active member of the military or a spouse, family member, and then to contribute again, come back and do more for your communities. That's what makes us proud.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we so appreciate you guys.
My name is Meghan Ogilvie. I'm the CEO of Dog Tag Inc. So right now we're sitting in Dog Tag Bakery, which is our living business school that helps teach entrepreneurship and small business to veterans that have service-connected disabilities, military spouses, and military caregivers.
Perfect. So, I mean, there's no better community than Washington, D.C. for a place like this. So it's fantastic. This is my first time here. My wife's like, I can't believe you've never been there. I'm like, leave me alone.
Well, make sure you bring stuff home so now like you don't get the doubling down of.
Totally. So I'm very happy to be here, and my first question is, and this is a perfect little icebreaker, what's the worst advice you've ever given someone?
I think especially when we began, in some ways I was like, you have to, like, it was almost like saying like, where's your business plan? Or something along those lines. And I think why I think that could be like really bad advice is because I don't, your business plan is great, but it's for you. And I think I meant it in that context, or maybe I should have meant it in that context, but it meant like this person delayed starting a business because they thought they had to have the perfect business plan. And I think at the end of the day, the purpose of that is that it forces you as an individual, as an entrepreneur, to start really thinking through these ideas. But at the end of the day, it's just projections, right? And you don't have anything to refer back to until you start doing it. So my best advice would be like, just start doing it, right? Don't wait for the perfect plan, because at the end of the day, like, you don't know what perfect is until it's like hindsight, right? And sometimes things that went wrong was exactly what you needed to happen to be able to take the right path, the next path forward. So I think I've told someone in the beginning, maybe like, you have to have everything skewed away with your business plan. And I think that was like naivete on my own part, or maybe just like I was, inferring that like you have to be preparing yourself for this platform, because there are times where you definitely need, to get certain funding, you're going to need certain, you're going to need your financials and you're going to have to submit, but it's just projections. And your numbers are projections, your marketing is a projection of what you assume. It's all assumptions, calculated for sure, but all assumptions. And you don't know anything until you start doing it.
So if you were to say, if I just walked in, we've never met, and I'm a Marine Corps veteran, I'm looking to start my own business, you know what I mean, and just kind of asking about it, I think there's this misconception, very much aligned with what you just said, that there's kind of a certain order of things. If you are blind but passionate and you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you have decided, you know what, I don't belong there, I need to do my own thing, here's what I'm passionate about, what is a kind of blanket thing that you could say that is a good way to start, since the order is just can be different for everybody?
Totally. What I would like, what we did, and I try to like always be careful, like I don't want to make suggestions to other people that I haven't done myself, right? Or at least our organization. So when we first started here, I was the only employee. I was going to Starbucks at 7 a.m. And then I'd go to a regular cafe locally, and I would just sit there and I'd see how many coffees were bought. Because you know what? I've never built a business plan for a coffee spot, right? Like, I don't know. I'm an avid coffee drinker. This is like number 5 for me. And so I love it, but like, so I was like, get out there and start seeing people that are already doing what you want to do. And then like see what you like about it, but also see what you don't like. And maybe don't like is the right way, but like what parts of that, like, take the core tenets of what you think are really interesting and what you find curious, and then take the other parts that you're like, yes. And I think the point of that is that recognizing that like there's people already out there doing a lot of amazing work, sure, for-profit, non-profit. So the best compliment you can give is basically like, emulating what they do and the best for it. But so our organization did a lot of that, right? We went out to speak to other VSOs. What are you doing well? What are you not doing well? What in this space, like from recruiting to stipends to the length of our program. It didn't mean we copied them 100%. We're a 5-month fellowship program for 4 days a week. Like no one else really has it other than education institutions. And we're a nonprofit, we're not educational institutions. So for us, and so if you walk in the door, I would say, well, what's your idea? Tell me like 5 other companies or organizations that you think are really smart and are doing something similar, but you find like that you have greater value. And this is kind of what we do in our program, because we have those that are really interested in starting one in their own business or 2 their own nonprofit, which again, the goal is like, okay, great, let's flush this out. But like go and then research on them, right? And then the goal is then if you want to start, let's say a nonprofit, and you want to start a nonprofit that works with military spouses in business. I would say go research 5 to 10 other nonprofits in that space doing very similar things that you think are doing it well, right? Come back to me, and before you tell me anything, then tell me how you're gonna fundraise better than all of them. Because the point is like, you can go work for one of those organizations. Like, have this entrepreneurial mindset and bring that to that organization. Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, as an organization, we look to hire smart, bright, eager, intuitive, curious individuals who want to come in and make this organization better. So what I would say to you, if you have this business idea, go for it. But before you do it, like, don't recreate the wheel. Someone might be doing it better than you. And guess what? Go work for them. Or go volunteer for them. Or go email, like, you know, someone that works for them, or, you know, even like the ED, your president, and say, hey, can I have a cup of coffee? Because you don't realize how, one, eager people will be to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you. And then two, what you will actually realize from it. And maybe you'll realize, okay, I definitely want to double down on this, but I want to do it this way, which is different, and not different because I need to be different, but different because this is more deliberately the path I want to go down.
So I've interviewed a lot of people and a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs, and that is the first time I've heard that, and that is excellent advice. I'm not exaggerating for the camera or anything like that, but especially for me, because I'm like, okay, who do I know that's doing this? And when I talked to Emily McMahon about it, she goes, who's doing this better than you? I was like, I don't know anyone doing that. She's like, bullshit. And I'm like, there's got to be somebody.
Right.
So.
But I mean, I think, like, again, like, the goal is like an entrepreneur, like, it can be lonely, right? We've all talked, like, there's loneliness. There's also loneliness in leadership. And it's because you're kind of, you know, and with that, so, like, the goal is, like, you can be an entrepreneur, but be part of a network of support. Yes. And sometimes some of your biggest advocates might be almost a competitor of yours, right? Because you guys are both in the same space, but, like, you're making each other better. There's you're building, like, so right now, when we first started in Georgetown, we are one of 9 bakeries and cafes. Guess how many we are today, 5 years later?
40-something?
23.
Okay.
In Georgetown.
Yeah.
In Georgia, which is like a 2-mile radius or diameter. Like, but do we go out and say, oh, this, like, we're not going out and researching what they're doing. We're just making sure what we do is excellent.
You said you can be lonely as a leader, you can be lonely as an entrepreneur. So when you were the first employee and you were sitting at Starbucks and all these other cafes,
totally.
Talk to me about that kind of lonely versus the loneliness you might experience now. Sure.
I think, listen, there's I think one of the most prevalent, you know, syndromes we all have is imposter syndrome. And, like, you can be a CEO of a Fortune 500 and still have imposter syndrome. It does not discriminate, right? And so I think the difference was, I used to work in finance, so I was in New York for 6 years working in finance. I moved here to help start a nonprofit bakery for veterans and military spouses.
Why?
I'm from a Marine Corps family. My father was in for 26. My sister was in for 6. My mom served for all of it. I was not my calling to go in the military, but I told my dad I'd find my way to serve. Like, I told my dad, I'll join ROTC. I was fortunate to play soccer in college and get a scholarship.
At Richmond, right?
Yeah.
I did very little LinkedIn stalking. Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll join ROTC. He's like, get a great education, play soccer, you're gonna find your way to serve. My parents have always instilled in us, like, one, remember who you are. Like, remember that you're part of it. Remember, like, every time you go out of this house, you represent your family, your sister, your brothers. You represent what your father and I have built to allow you to have opportunities. But, like, this is bigger than you. And there's a greater service, right, above. So this isn't like, it's great that you did this, but who are you serving, right? And that's the whole mentality our family always had. And then it was like, find your way to serve. And so my parents never pigeonholed me or told me I had to do one thing or another. They also never told me the answer. My dad's an engineer, right? Combat engineer. So I'm like, Dad, what time is it? And he's like, this is how you build a watch, right?
Oh my.
I'm like, Dad, I'm 5 years old and I have half a cup and 3/4 of a cup, and I need a 1 cup to make chocolate chip cookies. He's like, well, here's fractions.
Oh, wow.
My parents have never been impressed by the success, like, let's say, like the trophy. They were more obsessed with the process of every day showing up to practice, working harder, right? So there's value in knowing the process and not just the answer. Yep. And so I think when I came on board, I was leaving finance, coming here. The hardest thing about it was really that, one, when I heard Father Curry tell me about his vision for this, the fear of failure was not in my mind. It was the overwhelming gut feeling that I have to do this. And I didn't know why. I didn't have any background in it. I'm a sociology major that played soccer, that somehow, like, fumbled into finance. So, like, but those were all unexpected opportunities that led me to allow myself to be here and gain variety of skill sets to be able to do what I do today. So I think part of it is, like, Father Curry told me of his vision, and we were at a wedding, and I was like, you have to hire me. And I left that wedding with a job offer. And 9 months later, I'm back here. I moved here and helped started this, and I didn't know my ass from my elbow. Like, I love coffee shops. I love coffee. I have a passion for people. You know what I mean? I love the ability to work with people, which was like a huge like confusion when I worked in finance. Like, what the hell are you doing here, Ogilvie? And I'm like, I love my clients, and I love doing a good job for them. Do I give a shit about the market? No, other than it helps pay me. Yep. But at the end of the day, like if my clients walk away saying like I can expect Meghan to deliver every time, that for me was purpose, right? And so coming here and starting this, I mean, I went from a trading desk, zero like space or privacy, loud nature, mostly male dominated, you know, like this like cutthroat environment, to working with a Jesuit priest who was born missing his right forearm with this message of, I want to teach a man or woman how to fish, right? Complete opposite. I was running late to a meeting one day and I was like, I'm so sorry, Father Curry, I'll be there within 2 minutes. You know, in finance, if you show up at like 7:02, they're like, oh, you're taking a half day? You know, it's like so obnoxious, right? Yes. That's the industry though. Like if you're in or you're out kind of mentality. So I literally texted him, I'm so sorry, I will be 2 minutes late, right? And he texted me back, have faith, be at peace. I was like, are you messing with me right now? Yeah. Am I fired?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It was like such a cultural shift for me. And I think, and so then I went from like, you know, a trading desk to having meetings with the Jesuit residents. And so I think the loneliness when I first started is that like, what did I get myself into? I have no idea what I'm doing. And I just like, again, like you start Googling, right? I mean, if that was a verb, but like you start Googling what to do. And then I started, you know, reaching out and like to the community. I started like, okay, Mission Continues was local. I called them up, like, what's your mission? How do you start to, like, I just started calling people. And then I also just started asking for help in every place I could. Like that was, and it's like, I didn't even know sometimes what I was asking for help for. But I'm like, hey, listen, I'm trying to start this. Like that sounds really complex. I'm like, I know. How did you do this? Or how did you? And I just started asking for like people's like counsel on things of like, or just to hear their story. And part of it was like, I just needed to want to connect with people. I'm an extrovert with a capital E. So like even thinking alone is loneliness to me. Like I get ideas by talking out loud and starting the conversation versus sitting in a room by myself. And that's what I did every day. And so I struggled constantly with that.
So extrovert with a capital E. You highlighted like paramount things in all the interviews with transitioning veterans or veteran entrepreneurs that gets covered, and that is ask for help. Ask for help. We all get out, we have this mentality like I'm self-sufficient, I could do it, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. And my wife has this perfect analogy of a transitioning service member who's completely qualified for this awesome corporate job, but they've really actually never made a pivot table, and they're afraid to ask. And that is going to destroy their day because they feel completely incompetent because something that should take 2 minutes they can't do. But they can do everything else, but they don't want to ask for help. So you're an extrovert, so it's not that hard. Talk to me about what you've seen or what you think people who are introverted or have some of that maybe waning confidence, how they could do that, because you are now doing this because you were at a wedding talking and you threw yourself into the pit that didn't even exist. So how do you do it?
To be honest with you, I think it's not necessarily like, I still have a lot of pride. So I think like the pivot table is not just because I think there's pride in there. I think there can be a little bit of ego too, which we all have because one, we're human. And I think we also want to show that we can do it, right? And asking for help. And I think even when I started, I don't even know if I realized I was asking for help, but I was just more of like wanting to have conversations. And I think it's just because, you know, it was lonely. And I was like, I need to figure out like how I can have sit down meetings. And when I go in there the entire time, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. This person thinks I'm an idiot. And I am 100% faking it till I make it. And I think you have to also have that kind of like, and I think like the military, in military families, you don't have to teach resilience, right? In some ways, I feel like sometimes we're trying to break down a little bit of the resiliency, right? Because it's like, okay. But I think you have to have, like, it built the resilience of like every meeting I went into, I had to go in there confidently, even though I wasn't confident. Sure. I had to go in there saying, listen, like, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to do it. And again, like you said, you're going to get a million opinions, and guess what? They're all free, right?
That's very true.
And you're like, thank you for the opinion. This is not what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for me in the beginning, it was like, I needed to just start connecting because I needed more data. And that's how I kind of think about it. Like, I think about like entrepreneurship as like calculated risk. And like the only way you can make a decision is with data, right? And so the more you start talking to people, the more information you get, the more that helps like understand like how you pivot, how you turn, how you change it and calibrate it, right? So one conversation might be, well, we actually started a fellowship program, and the concern is that we didn't provide a stipend, we provide everything for free, but there was an issue with parking. Like, okay, that's really interesting. So it was a stipend, but we actually we had it too high, then we had it too low, and then we looked at AmeriCorps. And AmeriCorps, what they paid their fellows in this area, and that's the level we chose at.
Okay.
So like instead of me doing all this research, I now just said, I'm gonna do that. Right? Okay. And so, and I went to them saying, I don't know, how did you approach this? And by that simple conversation, now I've solved one thing, right? And that's kind of how you go through it. Like, well, why do you only do this program for 2 weeks? Well, we can't afford housing. Well, how do you recruit? Recruit nationally. Why don't you recruit locally? Well, we don't have enough local partners in the area to recruit local. But it's, oh, that's interesting. Well, why don't we just look local then? Because they're serving national. We'll look local, and so that means we don't have to provide housing.
Yeah.
Right? But that's like, and again, one, you're actually recognizing I'm not going to recreate the wheel. I'm not going to now recruit nationally and have the same problem as them, just because I think I want to recruit nationally. Like, it's working smarter, right? And I think that's half the battle, is that we don't recognize, is like we see it as not enough, less than all of this. But the recognition is that like the more conversations you can get, the more abilities to actually start testing the model. I would sit on the bus and someone would be like, oh, what do you do? And I'd be like, boom. I would like pitch to them, and they'd be like, that's bizarre. And you're like, okay, I gotta work on the pitch, or the ideas that weird, and you're like, no, is it a dog bakery? And you're like, oh, no. So like, but you can't I think the biggest thing you realize when you're starting, whether it's a for-profit, nonprofit, it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about the customer and those you serve. So we could have the most delicious product up here, and we had some amazing products, and guess what? We loved them. We thought they were the best. They're delicious. Nobody bought them. Guess what? We don't have on the menu anymore? Those items. Because guess what? When you start something, and if we created a program that no one wanted to apply for, we've now created the most beautiful program that has, we think, the best ideas, and no one is taking advantage of it. So you also have to let that ego down and be more willing to be vulnerable to listen and realize, okay, I can take this information and make a better decision with it. And I think that's just the constant thing, it's not about you, and you can't have an ego in this. And you have to have confidence. You have to have enough to be like, I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's right, but thank you for that, and I'm gonna keep moving forward. Because there are times that people will give you really strong advice, whether it's a board member or a funder or whatever, and you have to say I just don't think it's the right call, and you have to have the confidence to make that decision, but you have to have the humility to recognize that, when you're approaching solving a problem, whether it's a for-profit or non-profit problem, you have to listen to those you're serving, and that's what you build.
What have you seen from how it was to how it is now, and what are the expectations going forward?
I mean, just kind of piggyback what I was saying, cohort 1, this wasn't even open. So talk about flying the plane, building planes as you fly it. We're at the school.
My favorite analogy.
Yeah, it's the truth though. I mean, teaching at a school of continuing studies in Chinatown. It's also where we had our network and our learning lab partners speak. Then go to Union Kitchen to bake and teach that aspect of it. Then come across town to Georgetown to have construction meetings, right? That's cohort 1. And that's our pilot. And the truth is that because of permits, this got delayed. And so the fact is we have to test, we have to pilot the program with the hopes, and hopes is not in it, with the prayers too, that this will give us more information to make a better decision for cohort 2, but that we can actually have a cohort 2. And so to be honest with you, our first cohort, they were tough and they were phenomenal. And they hold especially very sweet spot in my heart, because it was the biggest growing year and it was the toughest. And that was that time as an entrepreneur and you're starting up, that every morning I was like, God, don't make it easier, make me stronger, right? I'm gonna put my armor on, because I know we set up a program that we're testing everything. And that cohort of 10 that started with us were phenomenal, and that they gave us a lot of feedback. But we learned a lot. We learned everything from how right now a few of our fellows would not be able to sit where you're sitting. Why? Because their back's not covered. And we recognize the value and how that can be a fight or flight issue, and that can trigger something immediately without even the program starting or running or someone saying anything. It's just situational, where they sit in a classroom. We learned about lighting and the effect of that, of someone that might either have had a TBI or enough concussions that it bothered them, or a trigger for them in stress. So then we have, we have dimmers on all of our lights, and we have shades on all our windows. And then it's the same thing with our desks and chairs. They're all flexible and movable. And that's because we just listen to that, right?
Well, it's not about you said.
Well, it's not.
That's like next level.
Right.
Like,
well, then we had a program 5 days a week, and they said, listen, you're recruiting veterans of service-connected disabilities. When can we go to our VA appointments? And we're like, brilliant. We were getting frustrated because they had to make, we're like, we'll always make accommodations. When we have 10 fellows and 3 have appointments within the same day, you have 7 fellows. And if a guest speaker, you're thinking of 7 people in a large classroom. It's a bit awkward. Sure. So guess what you're now? 9 to 4, Monday through Thursday. Fridays are off. All VA appointments on Fridays or before or after sessions. And we don't go a minute earlier, we don't go a minute later. So we allowed we were students of our own program. Right? And I think you have to constantly be a student of your own mission. And you have to be a student of your own business in the sense you're always learning. And the day I say this is done, or this is perfect, is probably the day I should move on. Because there's never a day you shouldn't be trying to learn from your own program, right? And I think some people aren't built that way. And I think that's either too much work or that's too much unknown, right? And that's totally fair. And that we need both. And so I think what I've seen through our program is when we've evolved, by every cohort we learned something and changed something. After that cohort we learned a ton. We made more structured programmatic changes and time framing and how we were situationally aware of our classroom. That then, by the way, became part of a conversation of saying this is part of the new normal, right? So your new normal might be if you go into the workforce and you get seated and right behind you is the water cooler. And people are constantly coming up behind you and getting water, right? And and it's like, how do you then go to your manager and say, listen, for me to be successful, I might have to actually have my desk moved around the corner and allow me to focus and work longer, and I can just be much more successful in that way. Versus, hey, listen, I trained for 20 years in covering my back. I did 2 combat tours, and it's a real trigger for me. Now you've told, you don't have to. Yeah. You don't have to, right? And hey, I might wear these glasses to help mitigate light for me. I'm perfectly fine. It just allows me to work longer and be more successful. Now we're talking about it as a way of being successful versus a way of not. And I think that's the whole process of our program, is that how do we think more directly and deliberately about the program we're providing so it becomes a step up in moving forward. And let's move on. This is part of who you are. It's built who you are. You're here today. We're so grateful that you're here today. Now let's take it and let's kick some ass. And so I think from our program, our fellows have taught us so much. And I think as an organization, what we're trying to do is constantly serve today's veterans, today's spouses, and today's caregivers. And I think that's really kind of the hardest part, is that you're constantly learning. For us, everyone's like, what's your profile? And we've had a 23-year-old and we've had a 61-year-old. We've had 3 years of service, we've had 28 years of service. We've had a military spouse who married after, and what the implications of that has been. We've had military spouse divorces. For us, and caregivers was, it's a whole demographic that you be very deliberate with. For us, it's how do we continue to serve today's needs, and thinking really thoughtfully about changing markets. What's the future of work? All these different aspects. So making sure that our program is training our fellows to be prepared. And I can't guarantee everything. And our team and our organization can't say, you graduate from here, we guarantee a job. What we can do is that we say this: we'll guarantee you an opportunity to earn a certificate in business administration from Georgetown, right? Pretty kick-ass. We will guarantee an opportunity to learn of a working and living business, that you will work directly with our chef, our directors, to understand all the ins and outs. You will feel the stress, you will be part of the excitement, right? We will guarantee an opportunity to network with 60 to 100 different partners of ours, entrepreneurs, small businesses, corporations, foundations, that will come in and speak directly to you only about what their, whether it's development and workshops or personal stories are. And the day we will give you the time and space, the opportunity to practice mindfulness, do yoga, journaling, reflection, and part of our program is called Finding Your Voice. And that's why we have a small stage that sits right below our dog tag chandelier. And one by one, at the end of the year, the fellowship, our fellows go up and tell their story. So we guarantee an opportunity for all of that. At the end of the day, though, if you don't show up, you don't show up. And that's it. So dog tag is tough love. And I think that's what we learned, is the value, is that we promise a quality value. You have to show up for it. We will support you, we will challenge you, we will love you, but if you don't show up, we're not going to show up either.
For transitioning service members, whether they're in DC or Arizona or California, and maybe they want to be an entrepreneur, maybe they want to go to the workforce, when they are unable to conceptualize their value, how would you tell them to prepare their mindset in order to project it in a manner that is going to help them get gainful employment where they want?
I mean, I think this, like I would say, start reaching out basically to mentors. Start reaching out to people that know you and sitting down with them and saying, listen, I am struggling in this area of understanding what the workforce can look like. I am struggling in this area to recognize how to best articulate my service. And you know what? They might not know it, but they might have a network that does. And I think the first is not to be a silo. Do not sit there and stew, because you're not going to get smarter. It is not going to come to you in an epiphany. The fact of the matter is that you're going to have to reach out, and once you start putting it out to the universe, you'll be shocked at how much the universe will respond. And I think that's the first and foremost thing. And then by doing that, you're already starting to build a network that wants to support you.
I completely agree. Thank you so much. I can tell you're caffeinated. I'm caffeinated.
Oh, no, this is my natural state, by the way. When I talk about dog tag and all this stuff, I feel grateful every day for what I get to do. It's like, I feel like it's such an opportunity, and so I'm proud of what we've created.
Oh, where can we find you online?
Sure.
Where would you tell people to search to research about the program and potentially become a fellow in the future or apply to become one? Yeah,
so you can go on our website. So if you go to dogtaginc.org, and then there's fellowship, there's an application online. We're open right now. And so you apply online, and from there we read the application, and then we take you to the next steps.